Welcome once again to this assembly. This is your servant of Yahweh, so Yah, and here once again to bring to you the events of the flood, the most massive showing of power in all the history of this planet. And it was done by none other than your father, my father, Yahuwah, King of all. Now we left off in verse 20 of Bere'Shiyth chapter 7. We're going to pick it up in verse 21, and we're going to see just how destructive this flood really was. Thank you, Father, for bringing us here today. Thank you, Father, for reading and teaching of your word. Bless us to have ears to hear, have eyes to see, because there is going to be some things to be seen. And we thank you, Father, in the name of your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen. Verse 21 through 23. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heavens, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. These verses leave no doubt that all life was destroyed from off the face of the earth, the ground. While all that had nostrils were destroyed, this did not necessarily include plant life. Plants, to our knowledge, had no breath of life. They were not listed in these verses, which emphasized the death of all life on land. Therefore, it is reasonable to conclude that plant life was able to survive the flood, or at least some of it was. Plant life will also include the Garden of Eden. So, what happened to the garden? That's what I want to know. Is it still here being guarded by the cherubim and the flaming sword? Also, sea life was also able to survive the flood. You know, maybe not all of it. I'm sure some of it was killed because the waters were very torrential. I'm sorry, very, what's the word for oceans that are real rough? There you go. It was really rough. So I'm sure a lot of sea life died too. So due to the violent temperament of the waters must have had, much sea life was likely lost. Nonetheless, an abundance would have been likely to survive and even strive, though the balance of dominance amongst competing animals might have shifted, sea animals that is. Either way, as keepers of the deep, the unfathomable amount of dead bodies gave them much to feed upon without competition being a factor. Again, consider the vast deposits of fossil fuels. Where did you think all of the fossil fuels came from? Coal and oil and natural gas. Let us not forget the numerous people who were killed both before the flood and after. Think about all the people killed during wars and other senseless turmoil. Think of the animals that were killed both on land and water that went uneaten and whose bodies went into the earth. Think of the billions of insects whose bodies died and decayed in the earth. Today, many of those skeletal remains have been found and are still being found in tar pits, in frozen ice, in ice, and layers of earth. Below, I have included a link to Ken Hovitt's creation series on YouTube. Check it out. Verse 24. And the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. And if the fact that there was water that covered everything, including mountaintops, hilltops, these were all good days. Those people had some horrible experiences. You know, their experiences led to their death, probably a gruesome death. You know, if you think about the water splashing about, you know, it's underneath the water, it's just like a tsunami or just like a flood. There's going to be boulders and trees and just all sorts of things that, aside from the water, would probably have killed them. You know, in fact, I'm sure it did kill them. So, you know, if the wall of water didn't crush them, if drowning didn't crush them, something underneath the water could have ripped them in half, you know, crushed them, crippled them, you know, just all kinds of things. So, but these were all good days, including one very good day, which was the sixth day, because that occurred several times during the time period of the flood. All right, chapter 8, verse 1. And Elohim remembered Noach, and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. Elohim made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. More than one Elohim remembered Noach. More than one El remembered Noach, and the living things with him on the ark. Well, everything is being put under the name of Noach, so remember that. Oh, I lost my place. There we go. More than one Elohim made a wind to control the waters. This was a group effort, a group of two or more. We're going to skip verse 2. We're going to go to verse 3, which is kind of short. And then immediately move on to 4 and 5. Here we go. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. It took about 5 months for the waters to recede from the land. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. These mountains most likely have gotten bigger since then. In the previous chapter, the flood waters were said to climb up to 15 cubits. Now, even if Noah was 10 feet tall, that would not even be half a mile high. So, considering the size of the mountains today, those mountains must have been considerably shorter, or the water continually got deeper than the last told measure, because that's not very high. All right, verse 9. Well, I'll just read through 6 through 9, but there's not much to talk about. It's pretty self-explanatory. All right, and it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, because it took him 40 days to open up a window. Now, remember those animals and the little thing I mentioned with them eating food? Well, I hope you didn't forget that. I didn't forget that, because the windows were closed for 40 days. I have no idea what he did after he cleaned those animals. He cleaned up behind those animals. I don't know where he put this stuff. I don't know if Yahuwah designed some sort of pipes or something to expel this stuff, but it took 40 days for him to open up a window. Whew. Can anybody say oxygen mask, a gas tank, oxygen tank? Whew. All right. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro, until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also, he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. Verse 9. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand, and took her, and put her unto him into the ark. Now, verse 9 made no mention of the raven. What happened to the raven? Did it return? Did it drown and die? Did it find some place to nest that the dove could not, since it can fly higher and further? Or did the dove eat it? We don't know much about doves. They could be, the raptors of the air. at least back then. But here's something interesting. There were two different types of bird mentioned here. You had a raven, you had a dove. Now, we heard that there were two of every kind of animal. So if the species were broken down into subgroups where you didn't just have one bird or one kind of bird, you had multiple kinds of birds. That was a lot of birds alone. That you would think that would fill up the ark by itself. Maybe they were all eggs for the 5+ months, but that's a lot of birds. So when you consider that with the animals, that was a lot. Think of all the insects. Wow, that was a lot. All right, verse 10. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. I wonder if the windows were closed during that 7 days. Verse 11. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. Verse 11 gives clear indication that trees, possibly all plants, are growing and returning upon the earth. Many trees and plants today endure seasonal flooding year-round. Some plants are completely submerged and some only partially, and they endure this for extended periods of time. They're pretty hardy. Verse 12, and he stayed yet other 7 days and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. Now, this is an interesting word. I didn't mention it before, but it's stated that he stayed yet other 7 days. Now, how many is to imply other? Is that just one more week, or is that multiple weeks in 7-day increments? So that's something to consider. We're not given the specifics on what that actually means. So it could have been 1 week, or it could have been 2 or 3 or 5 weeks. We don't know how many periods of 7 days this was, because of the word other 7 days. So consider that. Verse 13. And it came to pass in the 601st year, so that was at least 1 year since the floods were upon the planet, on the earth, because Noah was 600. Noah was 600 when this started, when Yahuwah told him about it. In the first month, let me start over. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Fresh air. Woo! He finally took the top off, and man, he must have been like just gasping, All right, so Noah waited until the earth was completely dry, at least on the land where it should be. While stating it oddly, Yahuwah is actually giving Noah's age here. The flood was on the earth 601 years. That was wrong. Noah was on the earth 601 years. Gotcha. That was his age when it was dried from off the land. So the flood was there, and he was 600 when it started. Well, 600 and some change. And he was 601 and some change when it was completely abated, when it was completely dried up. So we're going to drop this chapter, and we're going to bring this chapter to an end along with the flood. That's perfect timing. This was, a horrific event. You got all the animals and insects and birds and people all going into your gas tank. I want you to consider that next time you go fill up your vehicle, you change your oil, you get some transmission fluid, whatever the case. You burning some coal in some old-fashioned heater you got. All those fossil fuels came about as a result of all the lives lost during the flood, primarily. Now, I'm sure that, the wars and other mass killings on the planet didn't help much either. That probably all went, well, it did help. It helped the oil supply. So consider that next time you go fill up your tank, and be sure to give Yahuwah all the praise In the name of His Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, I'll see you next time. Enjoy this good day.